This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech. Pulkit Kumar is an explorer in the field of medicine, not researching new cures, but seeking new ways to bridge the gap.
And that gap is often the space between what the doctors think and what the patients understand.
And in many ways, that communication is vital to our good health. Hey, well, Pulkit, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much, Amy. It's wonderful to be a guest on this show, and it was such an honor when you guys said, "Hey, you can be a guest on this show." I was so excited to share my story, and it's becoming a reality today.
Let's get into your story, because it is something that over dinner tables in restaurants with friends, it is invariably a topic that comes up when it comes to healthcare, and that really is, my doctor doesn't understand me, or I don't understand my doctor. And I think that must have some kind of deleterious effect on your health if you're confused and you don't understand. How do you work your way through it?
Oh, for sure. I'm just going to start off with my personal story. So when I came to Edmonton, it was about 7 years ago. I was diagnosed with something called clinical depression within the first 3 to 4 months of moving to Edmonton. And so I was just 18. I was still figuring out what life is, how to go about grocery shopping or going to the university or doing assignments, preparing for the midterm. And then I was suddenly diagnosed with this. So came out quite surprised. Initially, I was treated with therapy, and then I was given antidepressants. And how do you explain all of this to an 18-year-old, right? You've just moved to a different country. I assumed the culture of New Jersey, or USA in general would be similar to that of Canada. I was so wrong when I came here. Now, how do you explain all of that to an 18-year-old? Like the doctors that I visited, the amazing doctors, they have been practicing for about 9 to 10 years. And, when they diagnosed me with depression, I was like, what, why, how? So the idea, so that's kicked off things for me. I'm like, okay, there needs to be something that I need to work on or read about depression, because I wasn't told about this, right? I wasn't told the background of depression. I wasn't told how I got it. I was diagnosed with it. And moving on into 2019 and 2020, I founded this student organization called the U of A Cancer Society. Now, the name cancer, you'd be like, hey, are you just working towards cancer? That wasn't the case. We were working towards research, promoting research amongst undergraduate students. We were working towards busting myths about cancer. And during that time, I had the opportunity to go to rural Alberta and talk to people who were diagnosed with cancer. And I still remember this story. There was this one family that we visited, and they had this one person who was diagnosed with cancer, and they kind of cornered that person into a separate room. Upon asking why is the case, they were like, hey, we heard that cancer is airborne. And so all of us were like, no, that's not true. Who told you that? And then they were hesitant on who told them that. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? There is a gap. There is a void. There is something that we are missing. Now, I'm in no position to question the doctors or to question the specialists or the surgeons or the healthcare professionals. I can only do what's in my hands. So I was like, okay, let's start somewhere. So we started off by giving them latest research on cancer, giving them some background information on cancer. But the thing is, those articles, they have so much scientific jargon. They'll be super confused. And within 1 to 2 weeks, they'll be like, you know what? I'm not interested in this because it's not simplified enough for me. So how about we just simplify things for them? So we simplified all the scientific jargon. We were like, hey, this is the background about cancer. This is, the diagnosis of cancer. These are the types of cancer. This is currently the latest research on cancer. So at least on my part, I was able to sort of close the void, if you want to say it. So that's something that I started back in 2020, and then COVID obviously happened, and then in 2021, the restrictions were eased, so we were able to go back again to check if there were any improvements, and thankfully there were, because people were interested, and then we organized something called a community engagement program in those countryside towns. So it was a start.
Yeah, I ask you, so I mean, there's so much to unpack with you, and I'd like the audience and the listeners to know that, first of all, your journey is marked with, you have a relentless appetite or pursuit for solutions for better humanity. I mean, all of the initiatives you're doing, this is one of them, I mean, we could be speaking for days upon weeks. So you have an unbelievable drive. Now, okay, so for the audience and viewers, you're in University of Alberta, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this where and then you were diagnosed with something that you were surprised that you were diagnosed with. Now, what came first? Like, where did this insatiable appetite for this learning come from?
So I was diagnosed with clinical depression first. I was treated with therapies and antidepressants then. And then I shadowed this psychiatrist who was the departmental chair at that time. I shadowed him for about 2 to 3 months. And then what we saw was, again, quite surprising, because a patient comes in with his mom, and his mom says, my son hasn't slept in 14 days, in 2 weeks. And it was me and my friend who was shadowing this doctor, and we were surprised. We were looking at each other like, what? And then we sort of had this conversation with the doctor as well. He was explaining the detrimental side effects of these antidepressants. So again, that's a gap, right? Because we need to treat patients holistically. It's just not about feeding them these pills or antidepressants. So creating patient-centered approach is another thing that we're currently working on with all my initiatives and projects. So that was, again, sort of like a lighting bulb kind of thing in my mind. You know what? This is something that I can work on. And at the age of 19, me and my friend, we published a scientific paper on the gaps and the current treatments and the future research that can be done. Heavily criticized for that paper, but we still got it published.
What kind of gaps are you talking about?
So first things first, communication gap between the doctor and the patient. We tend to assume that patients do understand what we are saying, but more often than not, we use scientific jargons or just some medical terminologies that the patients are not familiar with. And so we must simplify them, even though doctors ask numerous times if patients have any questions. Patients are more sort of introverted or just overwhelmed by the doctor. They more often than not, they just say, oh, no, doctor, I don't have any questions. And this is something that I've seen in the countryside, Alberta, that patients generally do not ask any questions from the doctor. So that's one of the gaps. Second gap is we're currently ignoring the side effects of the current treatments. Right? We need to create more patient-centered approaches. We need to look at their life holistically. We can't just keep feeding them these pills and keep injecting them. But thankfully now things have changed. Like the research that I'm currently involved with, we are looking at all the different aspects of this drug that I'm currently working with and how it can adversely affect people. So now things are changing slowly, but we have to keep pushing. So those are the two main things that I've currently noticed. And the initiatives that I'm involved with, they consider these things into account and then we take steps accordingly.
Nothing, but I mean, I don't want to, I was thinking, I don't want to knock Canada or anything like that, but there is something about in the Canadian psyche. And if you're talking about you're in rural Canada, it's even stronger, perhaps. And that is that people are wildly independent. People don't want someone else to take care of them. People will take care of themselves. How many times have your aging parents said to you, "Don't you worry about me, I'm fine"? And they say that to the doctor too, even though they're in a doctor's office because they're sick. So you really have to. I mean, is there training that a physician or a specialist can take in order to sort of cut through that wall of resistance?
Oh, absolutely. I think it comes from experience. Like we are taught it's okay to ask for help. Like I was the same when I came to Canada, but then slowly I realized, it's probably best to ask for help and reach out, if you need any assistance, than to just struggle on your own. And when it comes to healthcare professionals, they are obviously trained in navigating through the resistance in some form, and it also comes through experience. But I think in the long run, if anyone is struggling with anything, it's perhaps best to reach out to healthcare professionals because they are trained in this, and the more experience they have, the better they will be in helping you. Yeah.
Yeah. And Pulkit, what motivated you to go from New Jersey to Alberta? What was the motivator?
Yeah, it's quite a story. So I think my family we moved to New Jersey in 2012, 2013, and then I did my middle schooling and high schooling in New Jersey. But then it was around 2015, 2016-ish when the election campaigns sort of started. We all knew Obama was leaving, and then there was this confusion in the air, who's going to step up. But then throughout 2016, what I saw was a change in the paradigm of of the air in the United States, if I want to say it. People, like from what I saw, people kind of became more rational and um, more so on the extreme side. That's what I noticed, and I wasn't really comfortable living there anymore. So I was like, you know what? What's the closest country I can go to wherein I still stay close to my family? I can still visit them whenever I want to. And so I chose Canada. But then in Canada, again, it was a choice between big cities and smaller cities. So Toronto, Vancouver, smaller cities like, Edmonton or somewhere else. And so I was like, you know what? I have grown up in big cities. Like I have experienced the life of big cities. How about I try a relatively smaller city? So I applied to the U of A, and hence I came here. And then, people always ask me, why did you come to Edmonton? And then I don't usually narrate this story. I just say, I don't know why, but perhaps it was all meant to be. These the initiatives that I've undertaken, the projects that I'm currently involved in, perhaps it was all meant to be. Maybe that's why I came to Edmonton. But the real
Or,
story is the one that I just narrated. Yeah.
yeah, or perhaps you'd like the snow. I don't know.
Not anymore.
Do you find that is there any sort of difference between, you're talking about the mood of America in 2016 that seems to have continued through to this day, although election campaigns are always fraught with all kinds of danger. Um, do you think that is affecting people's psyches in the United States?
Well, for sure. When I look at it from a medical point of view, you have this one person, Donald Trump, who is just saying what's coming in his mind, and then you have these people who are like, you know what, this resonates with me. Whatever he's saying, even if it's just one or two words or one to two phrases, if it's resonating with people, people will like you. So there is a percentage of people that do like Donald Trump, and then they find other people who like Donald Trump. And this leads to something called de-individualization. So you forget who you are, now you're just part of the group. And with de-individualization, you kind of get into the more extreme side of things because you don't know who you are, right? You're just part of a group now. And it's easier to maneuver that group. And you have this one person who's continuously maneuvering that group. I remember, like, to this day, my dad, whenever I have a conversation with my dad and my mom as well, they just keep telling me, hey, we have these trucks with Trump 2024 signs, and they're just vandalizing properties, they're harassing people, and it scares me. I was like, maybe you can come visit us, me and my brother here, until the elections are over. Because I don't know what the environment is going to be.
Yeah.
So looking at it from a medical point of view, this is something called individualization, and people can obviously Google this, where you tend to lose your own perception. Like you don't know who you are anymore. You're just a part of a group.
Yeah. And Pulkit, I want to come back to, if I could, all the initiatives that you're involved with. And just before we pushed record on this, you had an absolutely fascinating initiative that you're working with about diabetes. Can you share that one initiative that you, just to give people an idea of all of the amazing work that you're doing? It's really creative.
Oh, for sure. Starting off with my master's research, I'm currently a master's of surgery student, and I work on treating diabetes surgically with something called transplantation. So islet transplantation basically means that you have a donor with islets. Islets are cells that produce insulin, and you transplant those healthy cells into another person who is the recipient and who is diabetic. But currently, the thing is, we would need multiple donors. Like there is no certain number to it. Why? Because once you transplant those cells into the recipient, the body sees it as foreign and attacks it and kills those cells. Now I'm working on necrostatin 1, which is a cell death inhibitor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to encapsulate that drug into microparticles, and I'm going to transplant that drug along with those cells in the recipient, thereby decreasing the healthcare costs by billions. And patients will no longer have to take daily anti-rejection medications or any other form of medications because the drug is already in their body, and then they can live insulin free from insulin injections. So that's one of the projects that I'm currently involved with. But when it comes to projects in LMICs are just low to mid income countries. And why I'm doing this, why am I not focusing on Canada? Why I'm just focusing on LMICs? Well, that's not the case, but I feel like Canada is a leader in healthcare, and we must also look at countries who lack resources. And so that's why I'm involved in projects, whether it's in India, Pakistan, Nepal, currently in South Asia in general. So what we are currently doing is, for instance, there's a state in India called Bihar. We have doctors who need some advanced training. And so we would just have a collaboration between the doctors in that particular state, and a collaboration and a connection between the doctors who are in big cities, and they would help train these doctors so that they don't have to travel, firstly, because it's all done through technology. And so they don't have to travel, decreasing the travel cost, decreasing the carbon footprint in general, and it's sustainable over long term. So that's one of the projects. In Nepal, what we are doing, we are having these mobile surgical units that can travel in the remotest of areas you can imagine of the Himalayas. Because those people, they cannot come to the hospital, they cannot travel 200, 300 kilometers to get some basic surgery done. So it's best to have a remote surgical unit, send off to them so that they can get some basic healthcare needs done, or some basic surgery done. In Bhutan, we are also doing something very, very similar. With Bhutan, the thing is they have a monarchy, so we have to be a little careful with the politics in there. But thus far, everyone has been super cooperative, and so we are again sending mobile clinics. They don't necessarily need surgery at the moment, so we just have mobile clinics that we send off to rural areas where people need some form of basic surgery. Other than that, we are also helping Bhutan with clean water, so reverse osmosis. We have about 2 units thus far set up in remote areas of Bhutan, so helping people with clean water. Yeah,
Are
these
you,
are some of the projects.
I mean, do you feel do you feel that you're, I don't know, sort of a humanitarian kind of person? Are you an altruistic kind of person? I mean, you seem to be listing off all these lists. I mean, you could be looking after number one here. What drives you to share so much with those who don't have it? And even talking about traveling around rural Alberta to see how you can help patients with cancer who might be in some kind of a void in terms of information. What drives you to do this?
It's very simple. I just want to contribute positively. There's so many people who are contributing. They are contributing in whatever form they can. I just want to contribute positively. I don't see myself as this um, big person who's a humanitarian, or other big words that people use, or a philanthropist, for instance. I just see myself as a person who wants to contribute positively. That's all.
And
And
Pulkit,
even in
sorry, go right ahead,
sorry,
please.
so I was just going to share, even in Alberta, we have this project called the Rural Surgical Obstetrical Networks of Alberta, our SONA program, which is aimed at training family doctors with ESS and OSS, enhanced surgical skills and obstetrical surgical skills. Training family doctors with these skills, we're going to send them off to rural regions so that people don't have to drive again to Calgary or Edmonton or any other big city, and they can get surgical care wherever they are, decreasing surgical wait times in big cities and making it sustainable in the long run. So again,
Wow.
this is something that I'm doing in Alberta as well.
Pulkit, you are an incredible human being, and we are grateful for you being on this planet. Thank you. What is it? And we ask all of our guests this question at the end of our chat and it's never long enough, but what is it about people that you believe in?
It's an excellent question, and I think the answer is just in the title of this podcast, that everyone has hope, and I see the hope in their eyes, whether I travel to rural Alberta or whether I travel to South Asia. I just want to make sure people don't lose that hope, because there's people out there who want to help them.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your belief in people on Believe in People. What a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kevin and Amy. It's absolutely my pleasure talking to you two. You have such a nice, I want to say the aura. The aura is something like the vibe. You have such a nice vibe, you two. And hopefully you keep doing what you are doing. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks,
Man.
Pulkit. Appreciate it.
Well, there is a young fellow with the whole world in front of him, and he's like going there, and he's helping everyone along the way. So hats off to you, Pulkit, and we are going to follow him.
100%. All I can say is yes, hats off to Pulkit. He's a remarkable human being. So grateful for him being on our show. If you've enjoyed this episode and if you haven't been inspired, then I don't know what you're thinking. But if you have been, please, we encourage you to subscribe to Believe in People, because we believe in you.
Thank you.